Hello everyone, this is Kory Gill. I'm back for another educational, informational, alpha spreading video. Today we're going to talk about Sierra Chart and the C++ template that I use when I create a new study. Today we're going to build a simple study from my template, and I want to show off some of the cool features I put in my template and give you a great starting point for building your own studies and adding a few really nice features that will make your development and release a lot nicer. So here we have the beginning of a new chart book, a simple chart. And what I want to do is use the analysis menu and bring up the Build Custom Studies DLL window. That's this window right here. Follow my cursor. Next, we bring up the message log window. That's the window here. This will come into play a little later. And right now we have a blank chart, and we're going to build a study and go through the steps to build it and some of the customizations I've made to my template that you are free to use in your own studies. Switching to Visual Studio Code, one of the things you'll see at the top of my file is that I'd like to put the path to my study in a comment so that I can copy it and go to the Build dialog and say Select Files. And instead of scrolling from my file down here, I simply paste it right here and open it, and I use Build Remote Build. I highly recommend this versus trying to install the compilers yourself and building that way. This way the Sierra web servers build your code for you and it comes back down saved in your data directory, and now we can add it to a chart. So I can either right click and say Studies, or I like to just hit F6, and what we're going to do is add custom study. And here's our study. It's called New Study Template, and I click the Show Settings checkbox here. One thing I want to call out is that we can also include documentation with our studies. This comes in, I'll show you this in the code. We can put HTML in our code to fill this out with more paragraphs and details about our study. Here's the description of one of our inputs to our study, the length. This is something I think a lot of people don't know about or don't utilize. Just let you know that that is available to you. So let's add this study to the chart. You can see we have a moving average, and I'm using two colors. I'm going to show you how that is done, as well as we have our inputs of length. We'll just use a 21 length. We add this to the chart, and you can see we have our exponential moving average with two colors. Pretty cool. Let's look at the code. Part of the code you want is you always have to include Sierra Chart, and I will just highlight the lines I'm talking about, and I increased the font in my editor, so hopefully this is easy for you to read. Again, you'll be able to download all this code from my GitHub, which I'll post a link under this video later. Everyone has to have a name. I have some contact information that I display. One of the things I add in my template is the ability to enable or disable the Sierra user access checks. If you distribute through Sierra Chart's website, you can enforce that your study, your DLL, can only be used by authorized users. There's another method where you can just give people the DLL. For this, I set up an internal user access check, which I have enabled in this demo, and I'll show you the code for that in a second. I also have the ability to have an expiration date on the study. Currently, this study has an expiration date of 8/1. Let's just change that back in time, and we're going to show the study expired in the first demo. Go back to Sierra, build our study with remote build. And one thing to note is if you add or remove subgraphs from your study, you need to go to Studies and remove it and re-add it. That way you see the new subgraphs when you do this. Our study is rebuilt right here. I'm going to go ahead and add it to our chart, and you'll notice right here, there's a warning that says this study's expired and it does not draw our moving average. So this is one way you can control access to your studies, make them expire so that users are forced to upgrade to your latest versions, get your latest enhancements, bug fixes, things like that, and limit trial versions or however you think it makes sense to use this functionality. Let's go back to the code. I will put this back so we are not expired. And now let's take a look at the internal access check. This is controlled in this function right here where I have an array of authorized users, and you get that from the help about. It tells you your account name. So right now I am authorized to use this study. Let me change this to be some other string and go back to Sierra, and I am going to rebuild the study. And while it's rebuilding, F6, remove this study. I am going to add it back. We wait for it to build over here. It's built. Let's add it back, and I hit OK. No moving average is displayed, but we look in the message log right here at the bottom. Follow my cursor. Not authorized, and the message: you're not authorized to use the study. Contact. Here's that contact information for how to get access. Pretty cool. Let's go back to the code, and let's make me authorized again. Okay, switching back to Sierra, let's just get this built. Remote build, look at our study, remove it, we're going to add it again, wait for it to build over here. Okay, and add it back, and here we have our study. All right, now we're back in business. Going back to the code. So we have this function here. This is what handles the authorized, not authorized. Another thing I like to put in my code, instead of typing in all these RGB values, I like to use names like red, cyan, hot pink. These are great colors. I like to use these defines. So that goes in my template. There's some helper functions I have for how to get the time. Now here's a section that talks about expiration. So there's a helper function for if the study's expired. Here's the function that lets you display that message on the screen of, hey, the study's expired. So this is a great use of the tool function functionality. So that's something good to have here. Moving on, there's a helper function not used in this study, but something I always keep in my template of logging the date time into the message log. Sometimes you want to log the time of a bar or something like that. And you'll notice here I use a lot of regions with a pragma. Sometimes I've been known as a regional manager in some linters, if you come across that. So what I'm going to do is use this region. The way I use it is, lets me have over here in code, is to minimize that, or collapse it rather. So this stays out of the way. So now all that helper code and things we just set and forget, it's just hidden, so we can scroll around our code and find the things we care about. So this is our main function for our study. This is our study. There's some code to check for if you're an authorized user. One part of every study is defining subgraphs. We have our moving average subgraph. Sometimes you'll see code where people have hard-coded 0, 1, 2, 3 for all the numbers of their subgraphs, which can be useful in some circumstances. I prefer to just initialize a variable to 0 and use I++. That way I can reorder subgraphs during development, and now I got to go through and change a bunch of numbers when I have multiple of these. Same thing for inputs. Restart the counter at 0, use that same thing, and here's our length input. During set defaults is where you set up your subgraphs and indicators, or your inputs. So we come into the function, we set the graph name, a description. Here's where we set the description, and that goes into the help file. We're going to auto loop, so Sierra will automatically call our function once for every bar. You can look up all these other things in the help documents, which are really good, by the way. And here we set up subgraphs. And if you have a lot of subgraphs, this section can get long and you have to scroll a lot in your file. But our moving average is just a line. Made it width 2. And one thing I put in the demo here is we have a primary color of magenta, a secondary color of yellow, and we indicate that we're using multiple colors with this value here. And again, this is in a region, so that if we wanted to get a long list of subgraphs out of the way, we can just collapse that. Same thing for inputs. Here's our input for length. And down here we have the security check to see if they're internally authorized. Here's where we check to see if it's expired. Here's where we check to see, here's where we test to see if someone's authorized, if we're just passing around the DLL, and we don't want that DLL passed around to other people. And here's another thing we can do here's the check to see if we're using the Sierra for distribution, if you're authorized here. And I have disabled this section up above with that define, since this study is not published to Sierra. So you can pick and choose which ones make sense to you, use all of them or none of them. And again, this is in a region that I can collapse. Now that we're done through that, I can collapse that. So now we're looking at something that just looks more like a regular Sierra chart study. Some of the setup in defaults, and scroll down here. This is our main study code. This is where most of the action and most of your development will be. So we initialize some variables. I always like to have a variable sitting around that has the current bar time. You'll use that a lot. There's a section here for the full recalculation on the very first bar of the chart where you can do other initialization, reset, counters, whatever data you have. I like to have that in my template. And down here is the logic for our study. And again, this is a simple, this is an exponential moving average based off of the close. We store the value into our moving average subgraph, and the length of our moving average is set by this input. And for colorization, it's pretty cool. If the moving average is greater or equal to the closing price, we use this dot data color on each bar, that's the SC index, and we set the color to the primary color. And if it's less than, we use the secondary color. And that's how you get different coloring per bar. And you don't have to use just primary color, secondary color. You could use any RGB code you want here and make many colors for your indicator. And that is a walkthrough the template that I use for building Sierra chart studies. I hope you've enjoyed this demo of this study, how to create it, and my template. And again, I will post the link to my GitHub where you can download this below the link to this video. So I would like to thank you for watching today. If you have any feedback, let me know. Please hit like on this video, subscribe to my channel, get future updates. Let me know what you want to see, questions you have. I'm here to help as much as I can, help you with anything you have related to trading, development, creating studies, etc. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.